I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts, you have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Etienne de la Boetie Squared. Check out my films, Occult Louisiana's on Tubi, Roku, Apple, and a few more. Doors of Perception on Amazon Prime, and Relay for free. We are booking guests for March. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome back to the show Etienne de la Boetie Squared. He is an author and founder of the Art of Liberty Foundation, which exposes the illegitimacy and criminality of government. Etienne, welcome back. How you doing?
Hey, it is good to be with you and your audience, and I am doing fantastic. Enjoying 2026 so far.
Well, that's great, man. It is great to have you back. Looking forward to getting into your latest book, To See the Cage is to Leave It. 25 techniques the few use to control the many. This exposes methods used by, as I like to call them, the parasites to manufacture our consent. Essential information for a waking society. It's been over 2 years since your last appearance. Since then, the psych war on society has been supercharged with anti-human technology, echo chamber algorithms, high-impact theatrical events, and the new mainstream alternative media to tell you what you should believe, offering the sanctioned public disinformation. As I said, it's been a while, but for those that aren't familiar with your previous appearances, tell the audience a little bit about yourself and let them know how they can find out more.
So I am a voluntarist author, and the last time that I was on, we were talking about my book, Government, in quotation marks, the biggest scam in human history. And that's really the thesis of my work, is that government is best thought of as a technique for robbing and controlling populations. It's impossible to have a moral, legitimate government because you can't delegate rights. You don't have yourself to a representative to represent you doing something you don't have the ability to do yourself. You can't be bound by a social contract that you didn't sign. And if my lovely fiance and myself can't vote that Chris has to give us all of his money because there's two of us and one of you, it doesn't matter if there's three of us or 10 of us or 200 million. There's no magical additional person that makes something immoral and illogical. And so government is best thought of as a technique for robbing and controlling societies. And it's the banks in the background. And so the banks use government to make something that would be illegal, which is something called fractional reserve banking. And so the banks have an exorbitant privilege of creating money out of thin air. So when you go to a bank to get a loan or to get a mortgage, they're not loaning you to another depositor's money. They just tickle the ivories. They credit your account with digital dollars, even though that's inflationary and even though that steals the value out of everybody else's money. And then you spend the rest of your life paying back a loan that they created out of thin air. And if you can't pay it back for whatever reason, you have an accident, you get into trouble, medical conditions, whatever, then the government comes in and they'll take the house that they create, the base that they create, essentially created the value out of thin air, and they'll take real assets, real property, real things for this money they create out of thin air. Now that ability, the ability to create money out of thin air, has made them trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. And so, kind of like what you alluded to earlier, they've bought up the media to ensure that the media never tells you about it, never explains what's really going on. And so on every single screen, you've either got distraction or deception. And the deception is that the government is legitimate on its like even if it's illegitimate on its face, every channel, the government's legitimate, and the government's the hero. The government's constantly saving the day. The CIA, MI6, the Mossad, there'd be nuclear weapons cooking off in every city on the planet if it wasn't for the CIA and the intelligence agencies saving the day. Whether that government hero is the president of the United States flying fighter jets to protect the world from invading aliens, whether it's Mulder and Scully. They've even got television shows and movies that make a hero, like the heroes out of TSA agents. Nerve gas would be going off in LA, and the Fish and Wildlife Service is the hero in To Hell or High. What is that? Like, there's I forget which one makes the which Taylor Sheridan movie makes the Fish and Wildlife Service the hero, but like every single government agency has some kind of movie making them the hero of the day. And then the government, my latest book, To See the Cages, to Leave It, really exposes that government has been sliding the belief in having a government to the population as a religion. And they don't call it a religion. The religion's called statism. And it's the belief in having a state in the first place, which is 100% indoctrinated belief. And so we can get into that. But that's kind of a thesis. I think that sets the table. How did I do?
Perfect, man. That is a great introduction. As it relates to some of the information in the book, maybe we could start with how they use the illusion of the American dream to begin the process of roping people in and indoctrinating them to this belief that we're actually in a free country, essentially.
Yeah, so if you go back to the kind of the 1700s, it really was a free country because there wasn't a centralized government. Everybody was on hard money, and and there was plenty of land available for everybody. There's still plenty of land available for everybody. The government has just seized it, and they control it, and they're not allowing anybody to do anything on it. But there's still plenty of land in this country if it wasn't for the organized crime government. And that freedom, that produced an amazing amount of prosperity that really stuck around with the American people for a long time. And we did, for a while, have more freedom than probably any place else on earth, but now it's rapidly being eroded by the government itself. And so now, the government on the local, state, and federal level takes well over 50% of everybody's money in overt taxes, covert taxes, and inflation. And when I say covert taxes, I'm talking about, every time you buy a beer, every time you get a cigar, if you're a smoker, every time you get, you get an airline ticket, or you pay for a gallon of gas, or you pay your cable television bill, or you pay your cell phone bill, or, now it's tariffs. Now it's, we're going to have this kind of hidden tax, almost like a VAT. Where we're taxing it at the importer level, but the importer is tacking on the price, so the consumer really pays it. So it's a new and hidden tax, additional tax on all the other taxes. And then even after you earn the money and they've taxed you on the money that you earned, they're going to tax you again and again and again, on capital gains taxes, on the death tax. And so you end up paying multiple taxes for money that you've earned, just once. And so it really is, it's a confiscatory taxation. It's weaponized to keep the population poor, so they don't have resources to really oppose what's going on. A lot of people are kept on the hamster wheel of sometimes 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet, because the dollars are losing value, and inflation is the biggest hidden tax of all. And so the more and more these banks get to create unlimited dollars in mortgages and loans and business loans and all the trickery that Wall Street is famous for, that reduces, so that begins to bid up prices. There's more and more dollars, come into the market. That begins bidding up prices for, a scarce amount of goods and services. And so companies raise their prices because of this process. And you, the consumer, you lose the purchasing powers of the dollars you earn and save. And that's really the big scam. And that's why the bank is the biggest, building in almost every city in the world, is because they're stealing the value out of everybody's money. But like I said, because they don't want people to understand what's going on, they've used the quote unquote profits from this system to buy up and monopolize the media into a small handful of companies, running hundreds and hundreds of subsidiaries to ensure that you're never going to hear what I just, explained on any, major platform. And that is the most powerful weapon used against the American people, is this control of perception. At the same time that they're endlessly, to your point, they're endlessly propagandizing the population that they live in the best country in the world with the most amount of freedom, and every government employee is a hero. And if it wasn't for the government, like I said, there'd be nuclear weapons cooking off in every major city on the planet if it wasn't for the intelligence agencies out there saving the day, every single week. Stay tuned for next week's episode.
You write about how legitimate government is morally impossible. Maybe we could break that down a bit for the audience.
So the kind of the good news message of my work is that we really don't need government, and so everybody should be living in real freedom. And the world is a self-organizing system. So voluntarists are people that believe that all relationships between people should be voluntary. Nobody has rights that other people don't have. Nobody has exceptions for morality like the government, like thou shalt not steal, except the government can steal for taxes because it's so important and everything like that. And so what the government has done is they've indoctrinated the belief in having a government, like I said, as a religion. And then they've been surreptitiously, the focus of the new book, To See the Cage is to Leave It, 25 techniques that the few use to control the many. They've been secretly and tricky. They've been indoctrinating the population with that idea in ways that are unethically manipulative. So they've been slipping it to the population in the mandatory government school, where the teacher, the priest, is going to is in the church school. The church is the kind of the school is the church of the religion. The flag is the indoctrinated holy symbol. The holy documents is the Constitution. The presidents are kind of the popes of the religion. And you're going to sing the hymns. You're going to engage in the common prayer of the Pledge of Allegiance. You're going to do the flag worship ceremonies, especially if you're in the Boy Scouts, the Cub Scouts, the Webelos, the Explorers, the JROTC, the ROTC, or police or military training. You're going to be taken in as a school child, in the United States, around middle school. You go on the school field trip to Washington, D.C., Mecca, the holy city of government, where you'll be taken to the Capitol, which looks like the Vatican for a reason. Everything is oversized, so you feel small and insignificant. You'll be taken to the temples. You'll see the deities of Lincoln and Jefferson. It'll be very hushed. It'll be very reverent. And they're going to subsume you into this religion. And then the monopoly media is going to come along behind, and they're going to do unethically manipulative tricks. They're going to run tricks on you, everything from subliminal programming to product placing the American flag at moments of high positive emotion in blockbuster movies and in television shows. And they're going to have, in some cases, in some movies, dozens and dozens and dozens of product placements of the flag all throughout there. I mentioned, the government's always the hero, whether it's Tom Cruise saving the world as CIA agent, Ethan Hunt, or whether it's Tom Cruise saving the world as Top Gun Maverick. The government's always going to be the hero, and the movies are using a variety of different techniques. The best known is a marketing technique called anchoring, to anchor the exhilaration of some moment in the movie to the flag or to the government employee or to the president or to so they're using kind of marketing techniques, well-known, well-established marketing techniques on the sly to give everybody a warm and fuzzy about being American. And so so for voluntarists that understand that you can never have a moral legitimate government and understand the trick of what's going on, our good news message is that you really don't need government, that everything the government does, most except for redistribution, which is immoral. You can't rob Peter to pay Paul. That would be wrong. But the good news is that without government, we'd all be crazy, crazy wealthy. Like like there would be an amazing, a free society and the free market produce an amazing amount of wealth. And so there would be more than enough wine, cheese, and bread at the table for everybody. And there would be so much surplus that we'd have, plenty of money to take care of the poor, the needy, and the disadvantaged, especially since it's not going through the dishonest, crooked middleman in Washington, D.C. It's being given by the people that earned and saved it at the local level, where they know the specific charities in their communities that actually deliver the goods, that are doing the most good for the most people. And so you're able to so not only would there be dramatically more money to go around, but it would be way better targeted, because people would be giving their own money without the crooked, dishonest middleman in Washington, D.C. And so that's really the good news message of my work is, number one, we don't need government, and number two, we'd all be crazy, crazy wealthier without it.
How do you feel about where we're at right now? It seems that many that are still plugged into our political system were especially taken for a ride the past 8 years with this administration and the events that have happened. But recently, we're starting to see the manifestation of the true agendas that are bubbling up to the surface, the technocracy, global surveillance systems. How do you feel about where we're currently at and the rollout of this technocratic system?
It's funny because I just published an epic rant on my Substack at artofliberty.substack.com, where I went off on a guy named Frank Tamburri, who does the Trump Report on the show, the talk show, Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock, and he's been doing it for a decade, and now he's even started to backpedal, and he's already starting to think, hey, maybe Trump wasn't what we were sold to. But I piled on because I've been so upset because to me it's been so obvious that Trump has been installed as a puppet for other interests, and those interests are, the Rothschild family and Zionist Israel. And so, it's the banks at the top, and the folks that have been behind central banking is the Rothschild family. They ran a banking empire in 5+ different countries around the world. They were behind the central bank and the Bank of England, famously, and they were the number one supporters of Israel, and they bought the initial land. They funded Zionist, organizations around the world that encourage people to move to Israel and settle Israel. And in many ways, I look at, as Israel as this like little, base of organized crime activity, where Israel is spending hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars a year to install politicians through AIPAC, through the Adelsons, through sponsoring politicians like Donald Trump, getting them in office, and then they send billions back to Israel, and I'm sure they're getting a slice and getting their investment back several times over. But since Trump has been in office, we were giving $3 billion a year. Now it's over $20 billion a year to Israel. And so the case that I made in the rant was, number one, they've had Trump by the short hair. So a lot of people don't know this, but like the official story of Trump is that he's a self-made billionaire. He started with $1 million loan from his dad that he paid back. And all of this is complete fantasy. The reality is the New York Times did a investigation, I think it was in 2018, that won the Pulitzer Prize for explanatory reporting in 2019, where he got over $400 million from his dad, Fred Trump, and he ran it into the ground. He's had 6 different bankruptcies. One of his major bankruptcies, he was actually restructured by Rothschild Incorporated. So Rothschild Incorporated has a bankruptcy, division. It was headed by a gentleman by the name of Wilbur Ross. Rothschilds did his what's called a workout, where they restructured all of his debt. They provided financing, and so he would have been out of business if he wasn't being propped up. And I think Wilbur Ross said it. He recognized the celebrity that Trump had. And so Wilbur Ross ended up being the Commerce Secretary in the first Trump administration. And so that's one connection to kind of Rothschild Inc. The other connection in the case that I made in my epic fact-checked rant at artofliberty.substack.com was that he was best friends with Jeffrey Epstein, who was running what was popularly known in Washington, D.C. as a brownstone operation. And a brownstone operation is, they'll get prominent individuals, politicians, celebrities, news personalities, whatever it is. They'll get them drunk, they'll slip them a roofie, they'll put them in a room with a little boy or a little girl, they'll photograph, video them, and then they'll use that for blackmail operations. And sometimes they don't even have to slip them a roofie. That's the person's preferred, whatever. But like, then you really have somebody over the barrel. And I think they really have Trump over the barrel. I think they've got Trump 100% involved in some, I don't even want to speculate, what it is, but I have a feeling that, not only do they have Trump financially, but they have Trump swept up in this brownstone operation being run by Jeffrey Epstein, who in the latest round of Epstein documents flat out comes and says, I represent the Rothschilds. And so in one of the emails that is now making, its way through the alternative media, verified email, he talks in an email to Peter Thiel, who you're mentioning, technocracy. He's saying, as you know, I represent the Rothschilds. And so now we've got kind of another nexus. Just to finish on Trump, so they've got a politician that actually has a lot of celebrity, and so, but he's kind of like a failed businessman. He's had these bankruptcies. They're having to prop him up, and so they're going to make him look like a successful businessman. And so a lot of people don't realize this, but Trump is an actor. He was on, his work on Worldwide Wrestling and for The Apprentice. He has a theatrical agent, and his theatrical agent is a gentleman by the name of Ari Emanuel. And I use the term gentleman loosely there. Ari Emanuel is another Zionist supporter of having Israel be a political state in the Middle East, whose brother is a guy named Rahm Emanuel, who was the chief of staff of Obama during the Obama years and ended up being the mayor of Chicago. He's the guy that famously said, you never want to let a crisis go to waste. A crisis is an opportunity to do something you wouldn't have been able to do in the first place. And there's a third brother named Ezekiel Emanuel, who is a eugenicist, quote unquote, bioethicist that thinks everybody ought to die in 75 and was a member of Biden's COVID-19 task force. And so these are three, very, Zionists that have been implanted in the U.S. government. What is the chances that Trump's handler, one of Trump's handlers, is the brother of Obama's chief of staff. And for those that aren't familiar with the chief of staff position, it's essentially the person that sets the president's schedule, that gets to decide who the president meets with and what the president's going to do on a day-by-day basis. And so it's one of the most powerful positions in the, in the executive branch and the administration. And so what are the odds there? But anyway, so Trump, so they create a show from Trump called The Apprentice, where they present him as a successful, independent businessman, and they give him the kind of the artificial gravitas and the brand name celebrity, the national brand name celebrity. Put him in a bunch of different movies. They create over time using Hollywood, which is overwhelmingly Zionist and which they have developed, because the number one weapon of this organized crime system is control of perception. Can we control the information that society receives to make it look like government's legitimate, to make it look like the elections aren't rigged, to make it look like, a variety of different, like whatever we want the narrative to be, we need to be able to control that, and we need to be able to seed it into popular society, not just in the newspapers, but in a kind of, what I call manufactured brute force consensus. And a manufactured brute forces consensus is we can put it on every single screen. And it's funny, I think people inherently know what I'm talking about. Like when Top Gun Maverick came out, I still remember like every, like whether it was social media, whether it was the network television commercials, whether it was trailers in the movies, whether it was, like cups at, fast food restaurants, and like it was everywhere. And so that ability to put something on every single screen and to be able to get the entire population to move in one single direction, that's essentially what they did with Trump, whether it was putting him in Home Alone 2 or Home Alone or, on all these different television shows. They created the brand, and then they installed him in the presidency with $400+ million of Zionist money. And so the last connection to Trump is the Adelsons. Sheldon and Miriam Adelson are billionaires. They're casino magnates. They run casinos, and they have them alone, not including other Zionist funding sources, of which there are many, many, many in the United States. But the Adelsons alone have given Trump over $420 million in just the Adelsons over 2 election cycles. And so they funded him into office. And then once he's in office, like I said, there's an obvious quid pro quo where he is now transferring $20 billion a year to Zionist Rothschild Israel. And so that's the case that I made in the epic fact check rant. And then everything that I just said, I brought the receipts, I linked to all of the evidence in that article. And so it's not just that I'm just sitting up here saying it. I'm pointing to source documents and where you can find out verify those claims for yourself. Ari Emanuel, by the way, and he's the character in the movie and television show Entourage, Ari Gold. And so he's one of the most famous theatrical agents in Hollywood, one of the best known, and he's even got a television show essentially about him, where his character, the character Ari Gold, actually represents on the show a lot of the exact same actors that Ari Emanuel represents in Hollywood. And so that's the power of being able to, to be able to control perception widely in all these different screens. That's the number one weapon that this organized crime system has, is the ability to control the information that people receive, to trick them into thinking that government's legitimate, the elections aren't rigged. There's a difference between Biden and Trump, even though there's not. I mean, there's a superficial difference, but one of the things that we point out, and that I point out in my work, is that Biden or Kamala or Trump, they're 100% in lockstep and completely aligned on the issues that are important to the bankers. they're 100% aligned on fractional reserve banking being legal, even though it's inflationary and stealing the value out of everybody else's money. They're 100% aligned on handing trillions of dollars with a T to private banks through the TARP, the TALF, the bailouts, Maiden Lane, and other financial scams. They're 100% aligned on confiscatory taxation for the American people. They're 100% aligned on handing trillions of dollars to Israel. They were 100% aligned on the scam of the COVID. They were 100% aligned on forcing a needle with an experimental vaccine into your arm. They're 100% aligned on all of the real issues. And then, they fight on guns and abortion and things that are important, but not as necessarily as important as the tax slavery and the stealing of everybody's purchasing power. That's really the main issue right now, and those are the things that they're 100% aligned on. So it's a trick. It's a puppet show. The Rothschilds and the bankers own both puppets, and then the puppets fight with each other. And while everybody is watching the puppet show, they're having their pockets picked. And then when people realize, hey, we're getting robbed, they're told that you can make the theft stop just by cheering harder for your favorite puppet.
Do you think these series of Epstein dumps are part of that puppet show in a sense that it's to further demoralize the people because we're not ever going to see any real justice, or the people that are involved at any real level be held responsible in any way? Do you think that it's possible for any real justice to be seen from any of this information?
So I think it's I have mixed feelings about this. Number one, I think that everything that's really, really incriminating has already been scrubbed out. But it's hard to scrub 3 million plus documents. And so a lot of things are, there's things that are coming out just because they were part of, like some of these documents, like I've been looking at some of the documents. Some of the documents are hundreds and hundreds of pages long. And so on page, 106 of like the booking thing, it came out that they faked, they didn't remove Epstein, when he was supposedly removed, to fool the press, they transported out a, sack of clothing, made to look like Epstein to fool the press, while the real body of Epstein was moved, in a different vehicle at a different time. And so there were certain things that, that are coming out, that are legitimate. But I do believe that most of the really, really incriminating stuff has already, been scrubbed out and probably never even made it to the FBI in the first place. So the first FBI agents, the FBI are spooks. They're intelligence agents pretending to be law enforcement. And so I think the first, FBI agents that were on the scene at Epstein's place were working for the intelligence agencies, and they were there to like scrub it, make sure all the videos ended up and, didn't get entered into evidence, didn't get entered into thing. You can see pictures from, Epstein's place, of a lot of these recordings and DVDs and where are those? And you're never going to see them. They're never going to release them. They've got all kinds of reasons. And so on one hand, I think that that there's not a lot coming out about it. But on the other hand, just what's come out is completely damning, is that, we've got a Rothschild agent that's running a brownstone operation, that's trafficking children, that has been providing, wealthy, influential people in the United States, procuring underage girls, and providing them in a house that, Virginia Giuffre, one of the Epstein victims, said was wired up for, with cameras, and had a room where they were, videotaping and capturing what was going on at the house on videotape. And so there's, the fact that this is going on is not really disputed. And I think that that's healthy, that people realize that that's one of the techniques that they're using to control congressional critters, to control, prominent individuals in the United States, to control politicians. I think that, there's a lot of good that's coming out of it, even though I don't think we're going to see any of the really, important evidence that may have already gone down the memory hole.
Having the understanding that legitimate government is morally impossible, what do you think the solution is?
Well, at the Art of Liberty Foundation, what we're trying to do is we're trying to widely expose that in something that we call the one-way revolution. And so the magician can only really do the trick until you understand how the magician does the trick. And then once you realize how the magician does the trick, then the trick loses all its power. And so, in my new book, To See the Cage is to Leave It, essentially what I'm doing is I'm showing you, 25 different tricks, unethically manipulative tricks that the government is running on the population because nobody likes to be fooled, nobody likes to be chumped. And then once you realize that the government's doing that, you can't read the book and not go, like what we say is, once you see it, you can never unsee it. Like you can just skim the book is very rich in visualizations and memes and historical photos and things. And it's tough to explain to anybody that hasn't seen my work. My first book was as well, but you can just flip through the book and realize that they're running these unethically manipulative tricks on the population. And so that really is like I said, it's the one-way revolution, because once you realize that government is illegitimate, once you realize that they've bought up the media and that there's a man behind the curtain in the media, there's a couple of, cornerstone, fundamental truths that you have to understand. Well, you're already halfway to mental freedom. And so part of this slavery system is the physical slavery of they'll steal your house if you don't pay the taxes. But part of it is a mental slavery to where they trick you into believing that you owe the taxes, that it's your duty, that as a proud tax-paying American. And then once you realize they're running these unethically manipulative techniques to get that idea into your head, then you're free mentally in a way that is very healthy and very positive and only going in one direction.
Let's get further into some of the techniques that government uses. We talked briefly about the media monopolies that control perception, the training and obedience programs, education system, symbols and rituals, ceremonies, patriotic ceremonies that are used to stir emotions in the masses. What are some other techniques that you think are really important for the audience to be aware of?
Well, do you want to go through a little bit of the book so
Let's do
that
it.
give the audience kind of like a little bit of idea? Give me the ability to share,
Sure.
and I'll just we'll run through some of these unethically manipulative techniques.
Yeah.
But the number one technique really is the government school system. Okay, it's we're going to take kids and we're going to force them into a mandatory government school before they're old enough to really, understand what we're going to be done, and we're going to indoctrinate them into the religion of statism. And as I said before, statism is the belief in having a state, in having a government. Nobody's born thinking that you ought to give a monopoly on violence to a small group in society using easily rigged elections, and other means. That's an indoctrinated idea. And so the flag is like I said, the indoctrinated holy symbol. You've got the text, you've got the common prayer, you've got the temples and the monuments. The House and the Senate are the church leadership. The school is the church. Voting is kind of like praying and worship. It's a form of idolatry. So the flag is this indoctrinated holy symbol that is essentially an idol. And is it not like any graven image into which men have read supernatural powers and superhuman capacities? The state
Mm.
can feed us when we are hungry. It can heal us when we are ill. It can raise wages and lower prices even at the same time. It can educate our children without cost. It can provide us against the contingencies of old age. What cannot the state do for us if only we have faith in it?
Hmm.
And so so they're sliding this religion to the population, and then the population is exhibiting all of the classic textbook behaviors of a an unethically manipulated cult. And so they're getting, so it's kind of like a cult indoctrination training. We already went over some of these points here, but the number one thing is we're going to get the kids into this system, and we're going to force them to go to school, and we're going to teach them that government is legitimate, desirable, and necessary before they're old enough to really question the logic and the morality of that statement. Now, what I said earlier, about how it's impossible to have a legitimate government, you can't be bound by a social contract you didn't sign, you can't delegate. If I don't have the ability myself to steal your money and call it taxes, or if I don't have the ability myself to make up rules for you and have that and call that a law, okay, then I can't delegate a right that I don't have myself to a representative representing me doing. Like an adult can understand that. Like an adult can step back and say, hey, wait a minute, I've never really thought about that. And funny how the television, the monopoly media, has never, ever, 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 ever presented the alternative case to government, not one single time my entire life. But now that I'm listening to this guy talk, now I'm starting to think about it. And you can, as an adult, step back and go, hey, that's a dumb idea. That's not logical. That's not moral. That doesn't, it doesn't really make any sense. But to a kid that doesn't hear the other side of it, right? Because the government school is only going to present that one side, and they're going to slip it to you as a kid, and you're going to kind of accept it into your worldview. And where it gets kind of locked in at an early age, that's kind of like what's unethically manipulative. And then I also break down, there's a whole other curriculum, there's a hidden curriculum in the school system of obedience to the government. And so like people don't realize it. They just, well, this is the way it is and this is what we do. But there's a reason that you have to ask the government employees permission to go to the bathroom. There's a
Hmm.
reason that the government gets to search your bag, to conditioning you to be able to be searched at any time by a government employee in the future. There's a reason that the police are used in the government school system, and the DARE program and the school resource officers, to condition you that the government police are legitimate and are there to protect you, whatever. There's a reason they use the red, yellow, green troublemaker boards, and the public shaming and the collective punishment and the walking in lines, responding to drill bells. There's a reason they traumatize the kids with active shooter drills, where the government, employees are going to come save you from the active shooter. There's a reason that they're doing a lot of the things that the government school is doing, and that other. So part of it is part of the program is we're going to indoctrinate you into the religion of the state, okay? And then part of it is we're going to have you be obedient to the state. And then part of it is we're going to debilitate you. And so we're going to, as a condition of getting the free education, you're going to have to take the mercury and aluminum shots. We're going to feed you, glyphosated wheat and recombinant bovine growth hormone, and and BPA and BPS and the can linings in the school cafeteria, and there's going to be fluoridated water in the water fountain. And so we're running a debilitation program at the same time. And then that's pretty much going to produce a tax slave that's going to go along with the system without ever, questioning it. And so number one is the government school system. Now, number two is the government affiliated scouting programs, because there's really two different programs that the government is running. One is the school system and the monopoly media and the propaganda and the indoctrination of the monopoly media and the movies and the government being the hero. That really produces a taxpayer who's willing to tithe, okay, a cult member that's willing to semi-voluntarily turn over half of their income and overt taxes, covert taxes, and inflation. But they need another component to that, which is called the order follower. And the order follower is somebody that is going to unquestioningly obey the orders of this indoctrinated religion and is going to set their morality aside and agree to use violence on peaceful people and even kill and murder for the leadership of the indoctrinated religion. So this is the police and the military. And so the other component, the other main component to the program is the government affiliated scouting program that is going to indoctrinate kids into the pseudo-religion of statism with the flag worship and the allegiance oaths and the indoctrinated respect and legitimacy. And they're going to give the kids awards, Cub Scout adventure loops and Boy Scout merit badges for learning and regurgitating the doctrine of the religion, okay? But they're also going, and by the way, I was a scout, and I was a Cub Scout, and I was a Boy Scout, and there's a lot of good to scouting. But what I like to say is that scouting, like rat poison, is overwhelmingly good food. Rat poison's 99% delicious food, otherwise the rats wouldn't eat it. And so scouting is overwhelmingly delicious food, otherwise parents wouldn't voluntarily put their kids into it. And then what scouting does is they take the camping and the hiking and the camaraderie and everything, and they wrap it around this poisonous statism and obedience to hierarchical command and control and pre-militarization. So now we're gonna begin running a variety of sub techniques on the kids. We're going to put them in the uniform, and so the word uniform means single form, and that's an artificial group identity that supplants your individual identity. And they're gonna use that. You're gonna see that used in the military and in the police later on. We'll talk kind of further about that. But they're going to get the kids into obedience to hierarchical command and control, love of the uniform. They're going to begin, applying the social pressure of the group. They're going to be getting them into the flag worship ceremonies. They're going to, run a variety of different unethical, techniques on them. And then a lot of people don't realize this, but there's a program called Young Marines that begins getting kids into the military as early as 8 years old. And they run posts all around the country. And then some high schools, the entire curriculum is the military. The military is running high schools in the United States where the entire curriculum is the military, and that's how they're getting people that are willing to, set their morality aside and go in and kill 100 people in Venezuela to steal their oil, or murder, people for resources, or in armies of occupation, or whatever it is that they're running these unethically manipulative techniques on them. This is a picture of some kids in the Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps. So in high school, then the Boy Scouts graduates kids into a program called Explorers, and then kids join a program called the Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps. And now we're going to shave the kids' heads. Now we're going to put them into the military, kind of more military uniforms. Now we're going to give them guns. Now we're going to begin teaching them how to, kill for the state. Now we're going to begin teaching them how to sweep rooms and do a, variety of military kind of activities. And then also there are Explorer programs for the police. And there's over 2,000 police Explorer posts. And so now we're going to give the kids uniforms, and we're going to begin acclimating them into the cadres of the enforcers that are willing, like I said, willing to use violence on peaceful people, either number one, going abroad, murdering in these armies of occupation and these wars for resources based on lies and manufactured intelligence, or we're going to make them enforcers where now they're going to be, we're going to compact them into an unhealthy group dynamic because in the police department, we're going to have them arrest people for victimless crimes, gambling, smoking
Mm.
plants, things like that, which makes the officers the criminals because we're going to make things that aren't really crimes. We're going to call them crimes, and we're going to have the officers do evil things. We're going to pay them above and beyond what they would have made in comparable, for comparable semi-skilled labor. We're going to put them into the uniform of the artificial engineered conformity. They're going to wear patches and badges to signify they're part of a certain group. We're going to teach them that delusionally, that they have rights that other people don't have. And if you understand the basics of where the word right comes from and what right is, there's no way for the police to have rights that other people don't. It's immoral and delusional, in and of itself. And but the police force is going to teach them that it's okay for them to use violence on peaceful people to enforce the commandments. Again, it's the religion, so the law is like the commandments of the state. And so and that's going to compact them into an unhealthy group dynamic. They're going to have gold-plated pensions, and they're going to be living off money stolen from others at the point of a gun. The other, technique number 5 is military basic training. And so now, once the kids have gone through the Cub Scouts, the Webelos, the Boy Scouts, the Explorer program, JROTC, sometime, now they're either going to wind up in ROTC in the college, or they're going to wind up in the military. And if they go to quote unquote military basic training, they're now going to be segmented away from the general population. They're going to be isolated onto military bases where their communication with the outside world is curtailed through this basic training, process. And they're going to have dozens of unethically manipulative sub techniques run on them through basic training to create an order follower that will kill on the commands of the state. And so again, some of them we've already talked about. They're going to shave the heads, replacing the individual physical appearance with the group appearance. They're going to put them in the uniform. They're going to use physical abuse, verbal abuse, excessive stress, degradation, humiliation, sleep deprivation, isolation. They're going to the services are notorious for collective punishment and peer pressure. And I don't know if you know, I've got a picture on the screen of the blanket party from Full Metal Jacket, but I know for a fact this still goes on today, where the non-conforming, are held in their bunk, with the blanket while everybody in the group is expected to hit them with an improvised flail. And so if you're just if you're kind of like a normal guy that won't do it, and they'll hit you with a bar of soap wrapped in a towel, and if they really don't like you, it's a padlock in a sock, and they'll beat the non-conforming until they conform. There's another picture on the screen for those that might just be listening to the audio. They take the stall doors and the walls off the toilets in Marine Corps boot camp so that you never ever have a second of privacy to think about what you're committing to do, what the ramifications of you killing people in foreign countries that aren't attacking the United States, murdering people, like they don't want you to ever have a moment of privacy to be able to think about what you're doing. And so that's a part of it. They're going to sing march cadences that will legitimize murder and begin conditioning you into being a murderer. And so I could go on. These are, like that's at least a dozen sub techniques. There's many more that the military are using on the troops. Just a couple. I'll just give you a couple more. Well, I can't prove it. I'll tell you what I can prove and what I can't prove it. I strongly suspect that they're brain damaging the troops in Afghanistan and in Iraq with excessive convoy duty and door kicking when they don't need to be doing that, because that creates a bunch of adrenaline over and over and over again. And if you're constantly taking a guy and you're activating the adrenaline gland over and over and over again, it's brain damaging. And so I think a lot of the convoy dangers and the door kicking in Iraq was meant to brain damage people. They're shooting them up full of vaccines. Special forces guys evidently die very very young of cancer, and so
Mm.
it's like there's a strong speculation that they're spiking the cannon of the special forces guy. When you're done with a cannon and you don't want anybody else to use it, you spike it so it can never be used by anybody else. And so
Wow.
essentially once the special forces guys get out of the special forces, they develop cancer and they die prematurely. And so there's a lot of speculation that that might be being done to them, so
Yeah.
they can never use their skills. Like while they have them in the military, they got them under their thumb, but they don't want them taking those skills and like teaching their neighbors how to to use what they learned in the military for community self-defense or to protect the real tribe. So anyway, so some of that's speculation, but that's one aspect of it. Another
Yeah.
technique, I'll just keep rolling if you want me to, but like
Sure.
another technique is, they're controlling the information to the military, to the intelligence agencies, and to federal, state, and law enforcement. They're controlling the information that the enforcers receive hierarchically. And so in the military, this is top secret networks where their communication is tightly monitored and they can never ever go to, alternative news sources on government networks. They're giving them armed forces television and armed forces radio, so they're controlling what the troops see and listen to, on a daily basis as much as they can. They have controlled news feeds and situation rooms. So, during 9/11 or the Oklahoma City bombing or something like that, they're only getting the Fox News and the CNN version of what happened on 9/11 to reinforce the whatever the official story of suspicious events are. Um, a lot of people don't realize this, but the government has federalized almost every state, essentially federalized almost every state police force by building what's called a fusion center on top of the state police headquarters, which is usually located in a major city in that state, so you're semi-federalizing not just the state police, but you're federalizing the local police force in that city in these fusion centers. And so there's 60 something fusion centers around the country. They're always located directly on top of the state police. And then they're frequently, like I said, so like Sacramento in California is both the state capital and a major city in Sacramento, and so the federal government has a kind of overlay over the state police and over the Sacramento Police Department in these fusion centers, which is a semi-federalization that can be flipped into a complete federalization like that. They've already got their hierarchical command and control over the state police and almost every major police department in every major state. That's called a fusion center. You can look that up. And then they use top secret classification to make it impossible to question certain orders or narratives being passed down the chain of command and disseminated to the troops or to civilians through InfraGard. And so I actually have some friends of mine that are, very wealthy, and they were in InfraGard and they were getting top secret intelligence that they couldn't tell me, because it's top secret, but like they knew that 9/11 was terrorists, but
Huh.
it's the information that they were given through InfraGard. They can't tell me the information because it's top secret, and only they get access to the top secret. So it's very very tricky. Oh, number seven is kind of one of my favorites, and also one of the I think the most unethically manipulative out of everything. And so the artificially indoctrinated holy symbol of the American flag is manipulatively woven into the burial ceremony of the deceased.
Hmm.
So this is a trick where everybody has seen the movies, or if you've never been to a funeral of somebody that was in the military or in the police, there's a flag ceremony where they're quote unquote honored by having the flag draped over their coffin, and then the flag is folded and then is given to the relatives of the deceased. And so now essentially that is to trick you into associating the government and the country with the memory of your beloved deceased. Okay. And so that is unethically manipulative in and of itself, even when a lot of times, if you're in the military, the reason that you got killed was the policies of the church leadership, but now your relatives are going to associate the warm and fuzzy of your memory with the warm and fuzzy of the flag because of this like little trick. Another one is the paid for flag worship, where it's woven into stadium events and sports. And so everybody's been to a football game or to a hockey game where they've done the flag worship techniques. What a lot of people don't realize is the government is paying the NFL teams and the NHL and the hockey teams and things like that. It was as much as 53 million a year a couple of million years ago. I don't know what it is now. And so this is another, the marketing technique called anchoring, where everybody loves like a football game. You're outside, you got the energy of the crowd, you're having fun stadium food, you're drinking beer, and everybody's having a good time, and it's like, the sunshine shining. And so we're going to anchor that to the flag with the flag ceremony or the jet flyover, whatever. And so, for the same reason that a brand, or a company will license a really popular song so that you associate that popular song with their product, okay, they're going to anchor the excitement of the game to the flag. And so it's another way, like, a lot of people have a warm and fuzzy about the country, and they don't even know why they have the warm and fuzzy, because they're using these unethically manipulative events. In the last Super Bowl, in the 2025 Super Bowl, I think that people were wising up to the overt one. So they had a covert one, and they had the Kendrick Lamar, who was one of the rappers in the during the halftime show. His backup dancers were dressed in red, white, and blue, and then they just form an American flag for a second or two. And so you're watching the Super Bowl and you're having a good time. You're listening to a really popular song by a really popular entertainer, and we're going to anchor that to the flag. Mustard, who was the other rapper, has got American flags prominently on his jacket, on literally both pockets of his jacket. He's got two different American flags on his jacket. And so they're doing, again, it's, like I said, once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Okay. Once you realize, oh, this is going on, it's a trick, then you get it. And then we already kind of talked about the government is always the hero because the Pentagon and the intelligence agencies are paying for it. But one of the things I do in the book is, any place in the book, in the EPUB version of the book, you can click on it, or if you're in the print version of the book, you can just scan that QR code, and that'll screen pop the trailer for a documentary called Theaters of War that breaks down how the Defense Department and the intelligence agencies are behind over 1,000 movies and 1,000 television shows. Yeah. Let me just repeat that for the audience at home. The Defense Department and the intelligence agencies have been behind over 1,000 movies and 1,000 television shows that we know of, where they frequently have script control. They're providing military equipment. They're providing financing. They're paying for the F-16s or the F-18s and the jet fuel, and they're making the carrier available to the movie crew. And in exchange, they have script control, and they're able to, number one, make the government the hero, and number two, excise out anything that makes the government look bad, to the point of where a lot of these movies and television shows are actually changing history. They're actually,
Yeah.
miscommunicating what really happened in the Vietnam War. They're giving people like a warm and fuzzy, and they're not, that like we're not going to cover the My Lai massacre. We're not going to cover we had to destroy the village to save it. We're not going to cover the Phoenix program, where the CIA murdered 10,000 plus people in Vietnam extrajudiciously, where they had hit teams that would go and sweep people up in the middle of the night, and then literally blow their heads off without any kind of trial, any kind of anything like that. We're not going to cover anything like that. We're going to cover the camaraderie of the unit, or we're going to make the government the hero, even if we have to change history to do it. And
Hmm.
so you can just, scan that QR code, and on your phone it'll pop, like a 2-minute trailer that will, really, bring you to, some more information about this and the basics and everything like that. I recommend, watching the whole documentary. It's really, really informative.
Yeah.
Another technique is subliminal programming. So the government has been caught putting subliminal programming into television programming. And so I gotta preface this for the younger members of your audience. But for the younger members of your audience, in the old days, television did not used to be 24/7, 365, and
Hmm.
the television programming would end around 1 midnight to 2 o'clock in the morning or so, and there was always a television sign-off message. And so you're in an alpha state. Your brain waves are in a state where information flows into you, without being critically analyzed. And so this is an example where one of the television sign off messages is having the words of the Star Spangled Banner go across the screen, and as it fades off across the screen, they're putting other words on the screen just for a split second. They're putting messages as it rolls off the screen, and some of the messages say, "Trust the U.S. government. God is real. God is
Hmm.
watching. Believe in government God. Rebellion will not be tolerated. Do not question government." And so
Yeah.
they've got people in this highly suggestive alpha wave, brainwave state, and they're slipping them subliminal messages that believe in government God. Rebellion will not be tolerated. Do not question government. So again, once you realize that there's a program that's putting stuff, secretly into, subliminally putting subliminal text, it is product placing the American flag, is behind 1,000 movies, 1,000 television shows. You realize, hey, I'm getting played for a chump here. So we
Yeah.
talked about anchoring in. So now we're up to technique 11. We talked about anchoring in the stadium events, but they're doing the same thing in the major movies and in the television shows as well, where the propagandist, the director, will build the movie up to a moment of high positive emotion. And the example I have here is Rocky winning, his fight for the United States, and then he drapes himself in the American flag. And so there's a, emotional roller coaster that the movie's on, and that apex of, that the moment of the highest positive emotion, they'll show you the flag.
Yeah.
They'll show you the flag. 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 They'll show you. So every people have, like I said, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And so now the next time you're watching some movie on Amazon Prime or Netflix, or the two biggest outlets for the 1,000 movies and 1,000 television shows that the intelligence agencies are behind, the next time you're watching Amazon, and you realize, hey, the government's the hero, and hey, the movie just had this moment of high positive emotion, and they're putting the flag on the screen, you cannot unsee it. Another example I give is the movie The Martian. The movie The Martian, the whole movie builds Matt Damon getting off Mars, and then at the moment of high positive motion where he's not going to make it, something went wrong. He's not. No, he is going to make it. He's going to make it. Boom! They literally they cut to Earth and people are waving American flags, and they cut to mission control and there's giant American flags on the on the wall behind the actors and everything, and you're like, son of a bitch. They're literally the moment of the moment of the highest positive motion, they're going to show you the flag over and over again. And so now you're going to start doing it. It drives my fiance crazy because we'll be watching a movie and I'll be going ding, ding, ding. And what that comes from is this little video right here, which is a little 8-minute, 32-second video. Again, you can do the screen. So it's not just moments of high positive emotion. In this video, what they've done is they have screen popped, and I'll just like fire it up for you so that for the audience can see what's going on here. It's essentially in 12 Michael Bay movies, they show over they show 469.
Oh wow!
They show 469 product placements of the American flag in just. I can't make this thing work. It won't like do what I want it to do. But you got the idea. Like there's a flag counter and it's going ding, 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 ding. Every time the flag is on, they just cut out a second or two where the flag is on the screen. Yeah. And then, by the time, 8 minutes and 32 seconds rolls around, there's been 469 surreptitious, sneaky product placements of the flag in just 12 movies. And then you realize that's artificial. They're doing that on purpose. They're trying to trick me into a warm and fuzzy about the American flag that may not be justified. The flag is woven into sexually appealing advertising, technique number 13. And I've got, for those following along, I've actually got a GQ, cover of GQ magazine where they've got Jessica Simpson in an American flag bikini, and they've got the subliminal text, like the cover actually says in giant letters, "God, this is a great country."
Huh.
It's literally like you might not even notice that, Chris, but like it's like once you see it, you can't unsee it. Technique number 14. I'm not gonna roll through all 25 because I think the audience gets the idea, but I will cover this last one real quick because I think it's fascinating. And so a lot of people don't realize they're using trick photography with the presidents, where they're photographing them where they have halos. It is the seal of the president of the United States, because it's a religion, right? And so the president's the pope of the religion, and so you want the population to think he's holy, and so they'll photograph the president, with the halo or in front of the cross or in front of Jesus. And then they'll put it in Time Magazine or Newsweek or show it on CNN or whatever. And so when they come by one at a time, nobody really notices it. You know what I mean? You don't think about it. You don't realize that it's artificial. You don't realize that they're, doing that trick on you. They don't realize it. But in this book, I've got a dozen examples. In my other book, I've got probably 24 examples because I've got 2 pages of it. Okay, so when you see 24 plus examples, your brain is really, really good at pattern recognition, and you're like, hey, that's artificial. They're doing that on purpose. They're trying to trick me. And that's kind of what I mean by, like, once you see it, you can never, never unsee it. So then the next time that it comes by, you don't, subliminally associate Trump or Obama with holiness. Now all of a sudden you're like, they're doing it again. Yeah, they're doing it again. They're like, look at that. Like, I never noticed that before that I read that guy's book, but now that I've seen it, it's everywhere. I can't believe that I never noticed that before. And that's what we mean by the one-way revolution. Like, once you see it and you realize that this program has been going on for decades, and a lot of people just have never noticed it, and because they come by one at a, these, like I said, these religious images come by one at a time, you don't notice it, but because the brain is really good at pattern recognition, when you put a dozen or 2 dozen or 3 dozen examples, in a book, and you can see it, your brain, analyzes that and immediately recognizes it's artificial, immediately recognizes that's being done on a purpose, immediately attaches the meaning to why they're doing that to the everything else that you've learned in the book. And then you're like, I'm out. I didn't understand that they were chumping me. They were running game on me, pimp game. And so I call it pimp game because a pimp is someone that uses unethically manipulative techniques and tricks on a woman to get her to turn over some of her money to the pimp, and the government is running unethically manipulative techniques on the population to get them to turn over their money to the pimp. And so I call it, like, nobody likes to have pimp game run on them. And so when most people realize that the government's running pimp game on them, then most people are like, I'm out. I'm
Yeah.
not, I'm not part of that anymore. You had me, and they had me too. They had me hook, line, and sinker. I almost joined the military, man. I went in and took the AVSBAT test with a
Hmm.
friend of mine. The Armed Forces Vocational Battery test. Like they had me, like, until somebody explained it to me, and then once I understood that what was going on, then I'm out. And so I explain it to other people. I show people how the magician does the trick so they can't be fooled by the trick.
I know that I am going to be looking for those flags in cinema now. And what you were just pointing out about the presidents and the halos, like you said, once you see it, I don't think you can unsee it. This is
Mm.
essential information. Thank you so much. Before we go, based on your own observations, your own interactions with people, do you think that more people are becoming aware of some of these concepts? And does it bring you hope?
Oh yeah, yeah, 100%. So I want to be the guy that widely exposes, the fact that that this is going on. I want to be the guy that, that makes it easy for people to understand and kind of easy to read picture book. And so I always like to, like, end on some good news. And so some of the good news is both of these books, both Government, the Biggest Scam in History, and my new book, To See the Cages, to Leave It, both of those have become the rare titles that people are buying in bulk for their friends and their family and their colleagues. They're donating to libraries. So over 10% of our sales, the entire time that the government's been in print now for 4+ years, but over 10% of our sales the entire time are people that buy them in what we call a friends bundle, 5 or 10 copies. There's not that many, but there might be 0.00001% of books that are bought in bulk. But
Hmm.
over 10% of all the copies that we sell are people buying them for their friends and their family, and people donate them to libraries. People send me pictures of them dropping them off at, like, the little mini libraries and neighborhoods. And Grant Elman, the front man of Presence, I don't know if you know the band Presence, but like he used to manage Airbnbs in Aspen, and he would make it the coffee table book on the Airbnb that he managed. So people are doing all kinds that are leaving them in Ubers. And so there is this, there is a resistance to this. And like I said, it really, the good news message is once people realize that it's going on, they're out. That's what we call the one-way revolution. Nobody goes back to being a chump. Nobody goes back to getting fooled. Once you understand that this is going on, most people are out. There is something called Stockholm syndrome where, people will, because it is like they've got us trapped, and like, they're threatening our, they'll threaten your livelihood, they'll threaten your house. And so it is much like the relationship between a hostage and the kidnapper in many ways. And so there are people that have Stockholm syndrome. It's much harder, like everything that I just showed you. It's much harder to accept if you've been through the Cub Scouts, the Webelos, the Boy Scouts, the Explorers, the JROTC, the ROTC, like every the more of the indoctrination you go through, the harder it is to get you out of the cult.
Mm-hmm.
But for most people that have just been through the government school system or whatever, and they're an adult, it's harder if they're drawing a paycheck. But like, it's hard to get a man to understand something if his salary depends on his not understanding it. But for the
Yeah.
most part, once people realize how the game is played and how what all these 25 tricks that the government's running on them are, then they're out. And that is a one-way revolution. And eventually the people that work for the government are going to come around, and eventually the people that work for the government school system are going to come around, and eventually the military and the police are going to come around, when everybody around them, and they're the last people pretending like they don't understand the morality and what's really going on. That only works, when so many people around you don't know. But more and more people are waking up every single day. That's the reason they do what they do with, the monopoly media and the control of information. And so I'm very optimistic. I think we win in the end. That's what we're about at the Art of Liberty Foundation. We're widely exposing the illegitimacy of government. We're widely exposing the criminality of government. And so whether or not you believe in having a government, like I said, I'm a voluntarist, but almost everybody can agree that the government in Washington, D.C. is being run as a criminal enterprise. And that's the other piece that we expose at the Art of Liberty Foundation, that the government in D.C. is being run as a criminal enterprise. Whether you believe in having a government or not, there's trillions of dollars that are going out the door in, being stolen out of the value of the money with fractional reserve banking, being handed to private banks and private companies through the quote unquote bailouts and stimulus, weapon systems that we don't need for wars based on lies and manufactured intelligence, mandatory vaccines that are actually harmful, ethanol subsidies. There's a gazillion ways the government is ripping people off and handing the money to identifiable groups. 20 billion a year to Israel is one example. So, like people are starting to realize, that it's there. And then, like I said, the good news message is we really don't need government, and we're all going to be dramatically wealthier, and there's going to be more harmony in society if there wasn't government. And what I mean by that is, on the harmony side, right now everybody's got to fight at the school board level for control of the school board.
Mm.
Like if you lose, the fight at the school board level in Virginia, you may get critical race theory forced on your kid. If you lose in San Francisco, you may get LGBTQT studies forced on your kid. And if you lose in Michigan or in Minnesota, you may get Islamic studies forced on your kid. And so instead of one size fits all government, in a voluntarist world, you're wealthy enough that you can buy whatever kind of education you want for your kids, and you don't have to fight, and you don't have to try and enforce your ruler on your friends and your neighbors and your relatives. You don't you don't have to fight at the Thanksgiving table, because you can vote with your dollars every single day, and you're not trying to impose your ruler on your friends and your family and your colleagues. And that produces a world that's way more harmonious. Thanksgiving dinner's better, Christmas dinner's better for everybody. And so that's what we're about. You can find out more about us at artofliberty.org. I mentioned the Substack at artofliberty.substack.com. You can get Government, the Biggest Scam in History, at government-scam.com. And you can get To See the Cages to Leave It at seethecage.com. And we have bundle deals where you can get all of those in a Liberator flash drive that backs up every single thing that I said, with the best documentaries and short videos and books and PDF, everything that's disappearing off the internet. We're making it uncensorable, and we're backing up all of the claims with uncensorable evidence of government illegitimacy and criminality in a credit card sized flash drive that fits in your wallet and happens to have hundreds of survival and prep and preparedness resources in case anything happens to the dollar or whatever. And so anyway, artofliberty.org, government-scam.com, seethecage.com, and artofliberty.substack.com.
Perfect. Etienne, thank you so much. We'll have all those links easily accessible for everyone. We'll definitely have to talk more in the future. Until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We'll talk again tomorrow. See y'all then.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for doing what you do.
If you're looking to start your therapeutic microdosing journey, but don't know where to start, especially when looking for the highest quality ingredients, including nootropics, and what you'd expect from a true microdose capsule, check out our friends at Brain Supreme. They offer the absolute highest quality ingredients so you can start your microdosing journey knowing that you're getting top-notch ingredients. To find out more, visit their website using that link right in the description, and you can get 15% off your entire order. Hello friends, I am so excited to tell you about Independent Media Token. Independent Media Token is a brand new way to show your support for independent media without having to donate a dime. Independent Media Token is a cryptocurrency on the Solana blockchain designed to generate funds to promote and foster the growth of independent content creators, allowing them to engage in their art without having to worry about being demonetized. Through a network of media partners, of which you yourself can become a part of, Independent Media Token's goal is to ensure the powers that be can never cut off all of our areas of funding and censor the only free voices left in the world. Join the movement today. You can pick up Independent Media Token using Phantom Wallet or the Solana wallet of your choice, where you can easily swap your Solana for IMT. Grab some IMT today and remember to always know your team. To learn more, visit independentmediatoken.com or use the link right in the description. Are you and your family prepared for an emergency? Maybe the fake alien invasion? Now is the time to prepare yourself and your family for any event. Check out Prep Starts Now. Their mission is to provide high-quality preparedness products that empower individuals and families to be ready for any situation. They're committed to delivering reliable, trusted gear to ensure your safety, security, and peace of mind in times of need. Their product selection is carefully curated to provide you with the essential gear you need to stay prepared. From emergency kits to tactical tools, every item is chosen for its reliability and practicality. Prep Starts Now understands the importance of family, and their goal is to equip you with everything you need to build a solid plan for your family's preparedness. In today's ever-changing world, being prepared is more important than ever, and Prep Starts Now is here to help you and your family stay ready with quality products and practical guidance. Use the link in the description and get 15% off your order. We live in an incredible age of information. More and more, we're discovering that we've been lied to and misled about much of our human history. Corey Hughes is providing profound revelations about World War I, World War II, the JFK assassination, Martin Luther King's assassination, and much, much more on his new Substack, Bloody History. Subscribe now for as little as $5 monthly. Just click that link right in the description to get started now and learn about our true history.